Joe Biden is still trying to get a handle on the challenge to him coming from some in the Democratic Party. And so he's out there, he's doing interviews, and we have the results of one. This is an interview that he did with Complex, and it was recorded one day before the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. So obviously there are no questions about that. But in the interview, he appeared to once again have trouble either remembering or stating dates, sort of misremembering some of his own personal biography. So when he was asked why he's running for a second term, he gave a very long-winded response, which is becoming more common. And he said, in 2020, when Barack asked me to be vice president, it's a small thing. It's one of those little slip-ups, but they have become very routine. There's like a very measurable chance if there's a date or a name, he's probably going to mix it up. He might correct himself relatively fast, as he did in his foreign policy press conference, but they're pretty common. Seconds later, he said, after that, I became a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, which is somewhat true. From 2017 to 2021, he was the Benjamin Franklin Presidential Practice Professor at the University of Pennsylvania. He collected more than $900,000 during that 4-year term. That is some big money right there, especially considering that the role was just honorary. He gave lectures and talks to students, but he didn't teach a full semester's course load during that entire 4-year period. So a lot of money during the time. And that said, it doesn't appear that coming out of this, he had the best showing. Now we're still waiting. We're eventually going to dissect the Lester Holt interview. But right now, especially with seemingly the Democrats sort of, some of them wanting to retreat, wanting to surrender, just one really strong interview could put the whole thing to rest for him, for better or worse. And thus far, he just doesn't seem to be able to deliver it. Like the best he's got is like a solid base hit, maybe a double in the press conference with a few little mistakes.
Yeah, there's 3 different things. There's the very normal Joe Biden exaggerations. I don't mean normal for anybody else. I mean normal for Joe Biden. So he's not a full-time professor there, but professor is in his title as he gives a couple of lectures and talks. He calls himself a professor at Penn. I'm not gonna oversweat that. Okay, so it's a typical Biden exaggeration. It's not that big a deal. It is professor in the title, right? And having said that, the much bigger problem is that Penn, my alma mater, apparently wasted my tuition along with everything else by giving Biden $900,000 for a couple of speeches. What the hell is that? Okay, but I get it. Former vice president, et cetera, et cetera.
It might have drawn donations to offset.
Yeah, and it's got prestige, and Beau Biden went there. And if some of our members know the story of how I ran into Joe Biden when I was a freshman at Penn, and as he was bringing in Beau Biden.
I didn't know that actually.
Yeah, the really short version of that story is I'm at the bookstore. I noticed Senator Biden at the time, and part of the reason I noticed him is he's tall and he's looking around the bookstore like this. Does anybody recognize me? Does anybody recognize me? Okay. So I go up by Senator Biden, nice to meet you. He's like, oh yes, he's super excited. And talks about himself the whole time, and that's it. Like he just, whenever you talk to Joe Biden, you cannot get a word in edgewise, and he'll always talk about himself, like enormously self-absorbed. And that was back in '88, okay? So he's been like that forever. I've told many other stories about it. So like this whole idea of, oh my God, it turns out he's an egomaniac. Yeah, he's always been an egomaniac. They just never told you about it. And so anyways, there's the exaggeration, not that big a deal. There's the lies that Joe Biden does. So my uncle was eaten by a cannibal. I was arrested protesting apartheid with Nelson Mandela. These are terrible lies, ridiculous lies, right? So that's not in the interview that we just showed you. There's no lies, there's exaggeration, but no lie. And then the last thing is just the mistakes. And they're piling up, We've said this 100 times on air. Look, we slip up from time to time. You'll catch us. Earlier in the show, I meant to say post and something about communication or something. And I said compost, okay? But it was from a Republican, maybe JD Vance or something. So it was a trashy post, so, to be fair to me. Okay, now that's, I just tell you that because yeah, slip ups happen, right? But one, you gotta catch them and tell people, right?
Yeah.
And two, we all go on air, like tonight we'll be on air for like 8 hours straight, right? You do 2 slip ups over 8 hours of no prompter, okay. But you're doing an interview to save your candidacy because people are worried about your mental health. You gotta be sharp.
Yeah.
And you can't screw up, and you can't say that you were vice president in 2020. So if that's the only thing that happened, oh, it's no big deal, right? But within the mountain of screw ups and him not realizing how badly he's screwing up dates, names, times, it adds to the now what is conventional wisdom, which it wasn't earlier, but it is now, which is that he just doesn't have it anymore. He's in mental decline and he doesn't quite realize it.
Yeah, and I understand some people probably get down on us for focusing on like issues like this, or like the saying Vice President Trump or President Putin or something. But we're not criticizing it as like a substantive thing, like he really believes that it's President Putin. Like, no, we're not doing that. But it's not, the purpose of the event is not intended to be fundamentally substantive. It is to reassure. It is an optics thing. And so we are going to analyze it on an optics level. And it doesn't look good if the entire purpose of the event is to reassure people that these things are not going to be the like commonplace throughout the campaign, and all of the events where you try to reassure us of that feature them, then that doesn't help in terms of the optics. So and it doesn't mean that, and we don't go crazy, we don't say that it's the same as Trump or anything like that, but it's just the tour is not working on that level. It doesn't seem to matter. The resistance is falling apart anyway, but.
Yeah, so perfect example of that is when he went and did that taped interview with the local radio station, and he gave them the questions ahead of time. He knew exactly what was coming, and he said that he was the first Black woman to serve with a Black president. So now we don't actually believe that he was the first Black woman to serve as president. We don't think that he thinks that, right? So that's to John's point about this is not substantive in that sense. But we're worried that he keeps saying things like that, especially on a question he knows is coming and he has the answer in front of him because his staff prepared him. And he still says he's the first Black woman to serve with a Black president and doesn't catch it. He at least caught it with Zelensky when he called Zelensky Putin. He caught it, and to me that's like, oh, okay, that's not as bad, right? But he didn't catch that he called Kamala Harris Vice President Trump. He didn't catch that he was not vice president in 2020, right? So
yeah,
guys, it's obvious to anyone who isn't trying desperately not to see it.
Yeah, and if you catch it, I will give you, like I give back like 80% of what's taken away by you doing it, because it implies that your mind is actively running. Like your mouth got ahead of you a little bit, but you were still paying attention to everything that came out. And it might have taken you a second or two, but you corrected it. That's, I think, almost as good as not making a mistake in the first place. Again, context for what the purpose of this tour is. But when you don't, and you just let it lie, and then like I'm watching it knowing that a lot of the Democrats that are big supporters of his are like, it's just, you gotta get through a couple of interviews without that. Or maybe you don't, because again, he's probably gonna be the candidate regardless.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.